Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
Hello? 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 Oops. Oh, here we are! Another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies!
Yay, it happened again.
Episode number 192. We're getting close, Peter.
I know.
Haven't written that new jingle yet for episode 200.
I might have it written. It might not be recorded. Hey, I went out to breakfast with the boys, right? You can't just call them up after 6 months. Hey, can I come over and make a recording here?
Right.
You got to have breakfast. How's things been?
Unless you're like me, you just send a check and say, I want to talk to you.
Well, there's no check involved. These are friends.
Exactly.
Hey, we'll
episode number 192. Secret. Secret is the first word. Legal loophole. Revealed, buys many real estate deals without loan qualification process. Wow. Let me read that again. Secret legal loophole. Revealed, buys many real estate deals without loan qualification process.
Here's where me and the boys and girls try to guess, where's Bill headed with this today? Am I on the right track yet? So keep talking. Let's see if we're on the right track.
So many potential investors feel they can't get in the game because they don't have loan power. But today, I am going to blow that myth to smithereens. How do you like that word? That's a word we used back in the 70s. Smithereens. And I don't mean leasing property, which is another top shelf strategy used when you can't qualify for a bank loan. No, what I'm going to talk about today is actually assuming unasumable loans so legal that your attorney can close these deals for you.
Hey, that sounds good.
In fact, this one loophole I have recently figured out is so huge, I expect anyone listening to this episode to be able to make millions and millions of dollars. Actually, I want to rephrase that. They aren't going to make millions of dollars. They can purchase millions and millions of dollars worth of real estate. Right?
Well, if you live long enough, you'll get there. But in the short run, seriously, you are controlling millions. Exactly.
So you can purchase millions and millions of dollars in real estate in short order. I know I have. See, it is top secret because our politicians wrote these laws for their own use and to hide their wealth. You know how politicians are. So, you know it works. More importantly, once you do the research, as I have, you will soon see the lies are passed around like kids playing telephone on the playground. After today, you will be blown away. You will be blown away at what you can and can't do. And I promise your floodgates will open with these type of deals. Dun, 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 dun.
Honest to God?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it is. No, I enjoy being around you because I see these things unfold. You'll call me up, Pete, what, Bill? You're not going to believe this. And I'm not going to say anything because I know you're getting at it. But I see these things unfold, and I see it like sometimes it's a few weeks or a month or two, and these things fall into place like, holy crap, look what we got now.
Yep.
So you got this, Bill's a mechanic. You know those big toolboxes that they have that go around on wheels? Well, mine's like you can carry it, but you got one that's probably about 3 foot tall, 4 foot tall, right, with wheels, and it's pretty damn big.
Toolbox, yeah.
But I'm talking about for real estate.
Yeah.
For the real estate tools, it's like that. But in real estate, these are tools. It's not like, well, I want to do wholesaling. That's cute. I want to do renovations. That's cute.
You know what I want? I want to make 3 offers on every piece of property I encounter.
Yeah.
And I can do that now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter about the property or the situation. Doesn't matter what they want. I was on the intern call last night, and they were talking about some dudes asking me about a property that's worth $320,000, and they want $400,000. I said, so make them an offer. He's like, oh, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And I told him how to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And they're all laughing. The rest of them are all laughing. Anyways, first, let's get back to the podcast. First, I would like to start off with, I don't talk about this deal strategy very much because at first it sounds confusing. Or, more importantly, against everything that you've been told. So, I lose most everyone in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to try to keep it at a pace that could be easily understood. Okay? And I'm not saying that to be arrogant, like I'm not smarter than anybody else listening right now.
No, it's not.
It's just I've actually done these deals and experienced it and been to the lawyers and been to and all over the country, especially with my coaching clients.
Well,
okay.
I'll say this much. If it seems unbelievable, if it seems impossible, if it seems like you shouldn't, it's done.
Not after today. Done. I have so much evidence today that it's going to spin your head like The Exorcist.
I'm saying don't turn the podcast off because this is done. And the truth is, the more impossible it seems, the more you shouldn't do that.
The better the deal
nobody does that. That's the deal you want that nobody can do. There's the money when it's impossible.
Totally.
Go. That's all.
So in episode 190 and 191, which are previous to this because this is 192, I talked about my core 7 deal strategy, right? Or we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Right? That fits every situation, which is what we were just talking about. Like I tell you, no matter what kind of property, I can give 3 offers because I stick to those 7 core strategies. Okay? There isn't a house that doesn't fit into this. There isn't a piece of property, residential property, that doesn't fit into these strategies.
Right.
No matter what. Right. And you can use any one of the 7 deals. In fact, once you start getting used to them enough, not only can you use the 7 strategies, but I use them as a foundation, and then I start mixing and matching them. Right. So I'll enter with one type of a deal and exit with another type of a deal.
Yep.
Okay. And that's what they're meant to be. They're, like you said, tools. Right.
Yep.
So, in episode 190 and 191, we talked about my famous slut deal, right? Which is a sandwich lease option transaction. We talked about options. Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say?
Transaction.
Oh, transaction. I'm on it. Yeah. So it's sandwich lease option transaction. No.
Sandwich lease
transfer.
option
We used to call it
transfer.
transaction. Yeah. It's a sandwich lease option transfer. Sorry about that. I'm on
it's a transaction, but specifically we wind up transferring it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a little better term. And it starts with a T. We have to change the acronym.
So sandwich lease option transfer. Sorry about that. We talked about options and we talked about lease options. Okay, so that's what episode 190 and 191 is. So we're moving down the scale. So we, if you look at my 7 deals, it starts with a slot deal. Underneath that is a option deal. Underneath that is a lease option deal. Underneath that is getting the deed or subject to. Right. Underneath that is the rehab retail. Underneath that is wholesale. Underneath that is owner financing. Those are the 7 deals, right? So we're down to getting the deed or subject to. Okay, which is my favorite deal.
Yeah. And
after today, I think you'll realize why. Okay? At least I hope so. Okay? So it's got 2 names. So if I use both of them, they mean the same thing. So it's called Getting the Deed. Its nickname is Subject to. The reason why it's called Subject to, or the nickname is because you're buying the property or the house subject to the underlying mortgage. So if the underlying mortgage says you have to pay 50% interest and you have to pay $6 million a month, then you're agreeing to those terms because you're not changing those terms.
Right.
Okay. But more real, any terms in the loan that the seller originally made when they acquired the loan stay in place.
Right.
Everything changes except for the terms and the owner's name on the loan. Everything else can be changed. Those two things can't be changed. If they change them, they would have to redraft the documents, and to do that, you'd have to go through the credit-worthy process to be able to get a loan in your own name. So when we buy these properties, the mortgage stays in the seller's name, deed comes to us, and we promise to abide by those rules and laws as if we were the seller, because we are now fiduciary people for that loan.
Yeah.
Okay, or for the seller.
And when you say terms, you don't mean just the time of the mortgage. You mean all the stipulations, how
the
much,
interest,
when, all
the
those
defaults, all that stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why it's called subject to, is because you're agreeing to all those terms. So it's subject. You're buying the property subject to the underlying mortgage commitments and promises that the seller originally made when they originated the mortgage.
So nothing's changing.
Nothing's
The
changing.
bank's not upset. Everything's So would it be fair to say that the full name of this is getting the deed subject to all the things, and we just take the first half or the second half to kind of shorten it up? But that's the long name. That's why it's too long. So we say one piece or the other. We know what we're talking about.
Okay, but today I'm going to reveal information that only a couple of my coaching clients and the guys around the office, which is you, and I talked to Emma about this, but she just smiles because she gets it a lot more than most.
Yeah. She just doesn't wind up in the middle of these. Like this week I had to make some phone calls for you to actually proceed with how we do this.
Right. So you're in for a treat as far as I'm concerned, because I actually had quite the conversation with myself for about 2 weeks, because I knew I was going to come to this portion of the sequence that we're doing, which is the 7-deal strategy. And not just the numbers. If you noticed, in the beginning of this podcast series, we talked a lot about the numbers in the 7-deal strategy. And this is more advanced stuff that we've been doing the last few episodes. It's a little bit of philosophy. A lot more practical. I didn't think I needed to teach the numbers again, because if you want to see the numbers for these deals, just go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/free stuff. Scan to the bottom of the page, and all the videos are there on how you buy, all the numbers, all the math. The deal strategy, the deal structuring mathematically. This stuff that we've been talking about in the last few episodes is a little bit more deeper than that, so you can understand. If you did both, it would be no different than you and I going to a seminar and paying $1,500, because we did that for some. We just recently did that for some apartment stuff, and the amount of information that I've been giving in these podcasts and the information that I give online is just as sufficient as what we paid $1,500 to go get for 3 days.
That's right.
And that's not any kind of hype, because I don't even know who I'm talking to right now. I have listeners I don't even know.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to I'm just doing the podcast. Okay. So I really do believe you're in for a treat. And, I believe once we get done, and I'm going to ask the question at the end, it's so high level in advanced technology that I have right now that I don't know anybody else doing it. Okay. I've tweaked it. I know that, there's guys like Ron LeGrand, and I think Dan Merrill doesn't do it. I don't know. I've never done Graziano, so I'm not sure about him. I don't know, other than Ron LeGrand, I don't know anybody else teaching subject to, and he's even backed off of it from a little bit, because there have been some, if you don't do it right, you can get in trouble. Yeah. And he's had a few students that I think didn't do it right and got in trouble, which is why he's backed off of it. But I'm telling you, honest to God, I am bold-faced right now telling you this technology I'm going to show you today is over the top, and you will be able to assume an unsumable mortgage without qualifying with the bank at all. It is so legal that I spent a half an hour with my attorney in a closing several weeks ago talking about this, and he just shook his head, and he's like, how do you figure this shit out? So, there you go. And I'm not bragging about that. It's because this is all I do. I was at the smoke shop last night, and I got because I used to be in the car business, and this dude is like selling all these cars, and he owns a dealership, and he's always asking me questions because I had a lot of experience. I used to buy and sell 75 cars a month myself, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And he's been buying real estate, and he's been studying at home about real estate, and he had no idea what I didn't know? Well, he knew I bought and sold houses, but he didn't know about all the other stuff. And
man.
He started with questions, and it was interesting. Definitely interesting.
I'm sure.
So I like to. So I, even wherever I go, I end up in those conversations. What I'm saying, because I eat, sleep, and drink this stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the basic story is this, and our first myth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we understand at this point what I just said. So basically, getting the deed means that the owner deeds us the house. The mortgage stays in their name. We own the property.
Mm-hmm.
So the first objection, which I'm not going to cover right now, I'm going to come back to it, is why would somebody do that? Because it's extremely illegal. That's why.
Yep.
So let's deal with the first myth.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So FHA, which is government mortgage.
Yep.
VA, which is veterans mortgage,
mm-hmm.
and USDA mortgage, which is like a a government mortgage.
Agricultural?
Yeah.
Oh.
Can still be assumed legally. Nobody knows that.
Yeah.
But that's not my secret. So you get that? So FHA mortgages can still be assumed legally. So you hear in the industry, well, what happens about the due on sale clause? Right? So a due on sale clause simply means that when you pass the deed, if the bank finds out about it, they can call the loan in.
Right. As far as they're concerned, somebody else owns the house, so it makes them feel uncomfortable. Like, wait a minute, why would that guy bother to pay me? Maybe because we don't have to deal directly with that guy now.
Right.
So they make
the name on the deed is not matching the name on the loan. So it's a myth because they still have the house as collateral. It doesn't matter whose name is on the deed.
Because of the mortgage.
Right.
The mortgage connects the loan to the house.
We're jumping ahead, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. So the first myth is that FHA, VA, and USDA mortgages can still be assumed legally.
Okay.
So if you have a seller and has an FHA mortgage, you can assume that mortgage. Okay. Now, as of December 1st, 1986, the law says to assume these mortgages, the buyer must be creditworthy to assume the loans. So if somebody has an FHA mortgage, like if I was buying a house from you and you had an FHA mortgage, which FHA mortgages is probably 80% of the mortgages, if not more.
Right.
It's the majority of the mortgages.
Yeah.
I think it's Federal Housing Authority is what that stands for, right?
Sounds right.
So FHA mortgages. So if I was buying a house from you, Peter, and you had an FHA mortgage, I could call FHA up and say I want to assume this mortgage. I'd go through the application process, and they would allow me to do that as long as I hit their checklist points. Right? They'll let me assume the mortgage.
Do they care either way? Is it beneficial to them? Not beneficial to them? Do they care?
No.
As long as they keep the mortgage and keep getting paid?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they will allow you to do that. It's not something I would want to do, but it is, for a new person that's coming into the industry, you could actually buy a mailing list with FHA mortgage people and start sending them letters. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I'd like to buy your house at. Or I'd like to assume your mortgage at. Anything. I mean, just send them letters. You could do that.
Sure.
Right? All right. So let's keep moving. As of 2014, the year 2014, approximately, you ready for this? This is huge. Approximately 18% or 1 out of 6 transactions done in the United States are done this way.
Really? Okay, now that is funny.
18% or about 1 out of 6 transactions are done that way.
Directly with the bank, like you just said?
The FHA assumable mortgage.
Yeah.
Or VA or USDA.
Okay.
So, my question is this. How come you don't know about it?
Me personally.
How come anybody listening doesn't know about it?
Well, all I've heard is that you can't do that with the bank. This is the first time I've heard you can do it with the bank if you qualify.
Right.
But that's the whole point. Aren't we trying to buy the houses without having to qualify? Right. So, because how many houses can you buy if you have to qualify?
I want to clarify that. What is qualification? So, qualification isn't with the government. It's not credit score.
Mm-hmm.
See, the government's objective is to put as many American families as possible into a house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the government's willing to take risk on those people.
Mm.
So there's a lot of other things. They have funny criteria, things like no chipping paint so the kids can't get sick. Right. No lead paint so kids can't get sick. It's all around safety issues for the property. Make sure there's a railing that has 6-inch, laths in them, so a kid can't stick his head in there.
Get stuck, wind up on TV.
Yeah. They're more interested on that stuff than they are the actual credit, because the government prints the money. It's free to them, right? So they need to get this money distributed into the society. Right, so this is their way of doing it.
You said that once. I never thought of it. We hear that they print it, but they actually send it to the banks to pay for the mortgages.
How else would they print all this money? How are they going to get it distributed in society?
I was hoping for checks in the mail personally, but I haven't seen that happen.
Yeah. So these are the ways they do it. But
never thought of it though. You did.
I mean, this is stuff you can Google. This is not anything that's a secret. Just go Google this. But the point is that 18% of the transactions in the real estate industry are transactions that are being assumed from FHA.
Okay.
So how come we don't know that? We don't know that because our realtor doesn't make any commission on this deal.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah, and no actual big chunk of cash moved at a closing for them to take a commission on, because it's just continuing to revolve with the existing mortgage.
So if I was assuming your mortgage and I paid $160,000 for a $150,000 mortgage amount, a house that has a $150,000 mortgage, I might come to the closing and give you $10,000 down.
Yeah.
And then I assume the rest. So out of that $10,000, how many people are going to get fees out of it?
Yeah, that's a small pie.
Right? I mean, by the time you pay the attorney and the taxes and the conveyance and blah, 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 that $10,000 is not $10,000 anymore.
Yeah.
So it's not a fee-based strategy, which is why we don't hear of it.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, we have a couple of exceptions. Okay? VA loans are VA loans that are originated before March 1st, 1988 can be transferred without the bank's involvement.
Okay.
So VA loans originated, that means the loan started before March of 1988, can be assumed without the bank's permission.
That's 32 years ago.
I was just going to say, but the problem is that's 32 years ago. So
and
finding those,
wouldn't it be paid by now? Most
finding
of them, right?
those would not be simple. But
Yeah.
I'm just giving you data because you never know, right?
Yeah.
So FHA loans originated between 1986 and 1989 are freely assumable.
So again, which ones?
1986 to 1989.
Still VA?
No, FHA loans.
Okay.
FHA loans originated between 1986 and 1989 are freely assumable despite any restrictions stated on the mortgage.
Well.
But again, and that's put forth in the HUD Reform Act of 1989.
Where do you get all this stuff?
Yeah, I did my research. Now, here's the amazing thing. is think back of what happened in 1989. We were in one of those slumps, and they were trying to boost the economy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what was going on. So that's why these things happen, right?
Right.
So, but again, these are 30-year loans, so you're probably not going to find a lot of these, right? And of course, any FHA loan originated before December of 1986 generally contain no restrictions, right? So they're assumable.
Yep.
Okay? So those are good, but again, most of them are 34, 35 years old. So finding them is not going to be easy. So what I'm saying is that the only barrier that we have in this 2020 year, okay, is that the loans have expired more than likely. But think of it this way. How many people like us assumed how many of those mortgages to buy real estate back in the day? I mean, think of this. Back in the 80s and the 90s, actually the 90s and 2000, all those mortgages were assumable.
Yeah.
And investors didn't even know it because there was this myth. By the way, who do you think would spread the myth around that says you can't assume the mortgages?
Gee, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Wouldn't be the guy that's collecting the interest, would it?
Who would do that?
Yeah, the banker.
No,
right?
Man.
All right. USDA loans are still assumable to date. Okay? If the buyer is creditworthy. So FHA, VA, and USDA loans are still assumable if you're creditworthy. Okay? What most don't know is FHA and VA loans don't have a due on sale clause. So you go to these seminars, or like I think his name is Brad Turner on Bigger Pockets. He does not like subject to. Right? Where was I the other day? I was listening to, this was probably about 2 months ago. I was listening to, oh my God. I just went blank. The guy does lease options.
Kiyosaki? No.
No.
Joel?
Joe McCall.
Joe McCall.
Joe McCall. And his story is when he first started, he had, a handful of subject to deals and they didn't turn out good.
Oh.
Right. So he's like, it works. I did it. I just don't like them because they had a bad experience.
Which two don't have the due on sale clause?
So the, FHA and VA loans do not have a due on sale clause. So you listen to these people, and no disrespect to them, but there's not many of me out there that are saying, oh, this is the best way to do it. Yeah. I mean, Brad Turner on Bigger Pockets is like, no, that's not the way to do it. I hate them. And Joe McCall is pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
Right? Ron LeGrand is the only one that I know that pitches it. That says you should go do this. And me. I mean, I don't listen to everybody, so I don't know. I could be wrong on who else, but
I might have heard it from Kiyosaki, but I never got enough.
By the time I get done with this podcast, I am going to convince every person that's listening that this is the best strategy that I have. Okay? Here we go. So the FHA and VA loans don't have a due on sale clause. And it's intentional because they want credit-worthy buyers to easily assume these loans. Right?
Yeah. Well, if somebody sold a house to someone else, they might go to another bank and get a mortgage someplace else. Now, they get the original bank might get paid off, but they don't keep collecting all that interest, and they're making more money on your interest, aren't they?
Well, what happens when you get a new loan?
You have to pay the old one off.
Right. And what else happens?
Isn't
there a bunch of origination fees?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I found out. Yeah, I made a phone call. $7,000
in origination fees.
Yeah, refinance or whatever. Yeah.
So it's a fee-driven business.
Yeah.
So do they want you to know this? And it's not like some conspiracy theory here or anything.
They just
make more money. Common sense.
Oh, you see people complaining like the banks took in $2 billion last year in late fees and this fee and that fee, and they get pissed off and they want to do something about it. So yeah, they make a lot of money in those, like $10 here, $4 there, late this, late that. Sure.
Which is part of the reason why, I mean, the furthest reach I have in society is this podcast. I'm not one of those guys that's all over Facebook trying to sell you shit, and I'm not trying to be on stage or be a guru or none of that stuff. For all intents and purposes, we're underground. So if somebody's listening to us, they found us because somebody told us, or they found me by accident, right? And this is the reason why, is because I couldn't release this information without having some kind of ramification.
Yeah.
And so far, knock on wood, we've been lucky. Right? And it's only because I'm not big enough, I'm not guru-ish enough to go out there and dent their business.
Yeah.
Or create the animosity.
Their stock isn't going to come down and they're going to say, who did this?
Yeah.
It's Bill.
And I'm not, I mean, it sounds very, like I said, controversial. It's not meant that way. It's just, this is the way it is. I mean, this is just truth. You can go Google this stuff. Don't believe me. Go on Dr. Google or, the Google the mortgage guy and see what he says. Right? Cause you'll find this stuff there. All right. So, like we said, the problem with these loans is most of them have been exhausted, right? Or repaid or been taken out by refinancing, right?
Yeah.
So the pickings can be pretty slim. All I'm trying to do here at this beginning portion is to just take away the myths. Because when we go to seminars and talk to other people and we tell them we do subject to, the first question is first question is who would do that? And the second question is, what about the due on sale clause? Because all these other guys are talking about the due on sale clause. They're training you that it can't be done. So because they don't know how to do it, they're trying to justify don't do it because of the due on sale clause, and don't do it because of this, and don't do it because of that.
Yeah.
Because they haven't studied it enough, and they haven't done it. I've done so many of these deals, and it'll make your head spin. Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens.
Yeah.
I just did one 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I continue to do that. Right? So the pickings can be slim. So how do we assume these loans without the bank calling in the loans once the title transfers into another name, which is a subject to deal, right? Here's an odd fact. All properties are only held in one of four entities. All property, all real estate in the United States are held in one of four entities.
Right.
In other words, they're on the deed. They own the property. So the first one is a personal name.
Yeah.
Right? Bill Hawthorne. Right? Or John Jones. And Mary Jones.
Yep.
Okay. Number two. Oh my goodness, sorry. A business name. Right? Or we would call that an entity, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be like an LLC, a C corporation, S corporation, something along those lines, right? So it'd be held in a business name. Number three would be a partnership. Kind of like what you and I have on a property or a couple properties, right? So it still would be an LLC. That wouldn't be an LLC. That would be
LLP?
LPC, I think it is, or something. Limited Partnership Corporation.
Okay.
Okay. Or a C Corp or an S Corp. Okay. Now, hint.
Yeah, how is it different than two?
What do you mean?
Well, if it's an LLC or another corporation, and three, isn't it? How's that different than number two?
Because the partnership corporations are set up different than the limited liability ones.
Okay.
Right.
Just some details. Okay.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with operating agreements and who does what, and there's officers. You could do that in the LLC, but usually LLCs are smaller for like family members and stuff like that. They're people you trust. Partnership LLCs, and I'm not a lawyer on this, but partnership LLCs are how we have been taught how to buy apartment buildings. And what they do is they syndicate. In other words, you raise $1 million from your lenders, and there's, say, 10 lenders that give you $100,000. they all own a share or share a certain amount of shares of that partnership. So that would be different than a limited liability. It has more parameters. It has more work. Like, for example, to syndicate, I think it costs between $15,000 and $20,000 for a good syndication lawyer to set that up.
Yeah.
That's a lot different than a regular LLC.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. That's enough. I understand enough, at least.
So I'm going to recap.
Yeah.
So you can own a property in a personal name, a business name, a partnership, or a trust. Those are the only 4 things that own properties. Nothing else. Okay. So we're going to come back to this in a minute. I just wanted to bring that up, that it's an interesting fact, right? Right now, what I want to talk about is our getting the deed deal, or as it's often called, the subject to deal. Okay? So, in this strategy, the owner deeds us the house, to us, like I said, right? And the mortgage stays in their name. Okay? Which, before you get your panties into a knot here, okay, let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
So, I had bought a house like this, subject to, in Wallingford, Connecticut, up in the Ridges, we call it. It's a certain section of town. It was built in the 70s and the 80s. You know, it's a bunch of, capes. Not capes, ranches.
Yeah.
13,
Raised
1,500. Yeah, they're all mixed, but it was all the same builder type of thing, you know?
Right.
Hundreds of houses. Right? So I bought this house. I sold it to a couple. Okay? There's a whole bunch of stories in there because I took in a camper as a down payment. And I gave him $34,000 for that camper and collected $17,000 and still made money.
Yep.
Okay? Anyways, the point is that we sold him this house. They stayed in the house. Completely guessed. It was like a year and a half. And they go get a mortgage. Okay? We close on the house. We're done.
Yeah.
I get my money. We're done. Right? Got my money
They get
at the
the
closing.
house.
They got the house.
First bank's
Everything's
paid
done.
off.
Right? About 4 months later, I go walking into my office, and some dude says to me, "Hey, you Bill Hawthorne?" I said, yeah. He goes, "Here." And he hands me a wad of paper. He says, "You've been served." I'm like, "Really?" So we're going to read the documents, and it's this mortgage company suing me for the mortgage. We're in foreclosure.
That's the original mortgage on that house. Okay.
Come to find out, what happened was the attorney did not pay the mortgage. So he collected $141,000. He did all the disbursements. He paid everybody in the closing, and he had that $141,000 in his bank account and never paid the attorney.
Really?
I'm sorry, never paid the bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jesus.
That's a story within itself.
That don't sound right, Bill.
He's no longer my attorney, obviously.
Is he still an attorney?
He is not even an attorney.
Not an
anymore.
attorney.
No.
You're kind of supposed to do that part, right? Jesus.
So here's what happened. The point in the story is it was probably one of the best lessons I ever learned in my life. Because when it came to foreclosure proceedings, okay, the bank did a title search. That's the first thing they do is a title search. So if the loan is in my seller's name and the deed is in my name, guess who's getting sued?
Both?
Both of us.
Okay.
Because the deed is in my name and the loan is in the owner's name.
Yeah. Well, they'd want to find out, hey, you guys, what's going on? So you both show up, right?
Right. So in most cases, I own more property and probably have deeper pockets than my seller. So
the buyer or the seller? The seller. That's
the
right.
seller. Yeah. I have deeper pockets than my seller. So I'm not going to want to go to court. So I'm going to make those payments. The point is this: is that the reason why somebody would freeze on this deal is because they feel like they've relinquished. An attorney would tell them you've relinquished your power by giving the deed up. Right? So it's not true, because if I don't pay the mortgage, then I'm in court and I have more
to lose
more to disclose and lose than the seller usually.
Yeah, so you can't steal a house and disappear with it.
It's not stealing the house.
Yeah, you can't disappear. The house is still there. You can't run off to Canada with it. They'll find you and straighten it out. So you don't do that.
So what happens is that my name's on the deed and the owner's name is on the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm not getting away with anything. So if you explain this story to anybody, especially the seller, it'll ease them up. Now, I don't know anybody that ever uses that objection handling when someone says, "Oh, I don't want to do that," because how many people have had that story happen to them? How many people figured that out?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's how you know that, because it actually happened.
Before that, I didn't know that.
You wouldn't know what happened. So, can you just tell us how you get out of it?
Well, I called the attorney, and honestly, the whole story, which I don't want to tell now, but the thing that perplexed me about the story was the attorney yelling and screaming at me, telling me about how he had to pay, I think, $4,000 or $6,000 in fees, and he wanted me to pay the money. Yelling and screaming at me because it was like it was my fault.
Wow. I thought that guilty people did that.
Yeah. Well, he did.
He did.
Right.
But he just took care of it then?
He ended up paying it off. Yeah, he had no choice, because I was threatened to report it to the Bar Association.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, put that aside. If we get back to the 4 entities that can own the property, if we were to change the entity from the seller's name to a trust, the bank will see this as estate planning and would never dream of triggering the due on sale clause.
Right. Because people do that. I'd like to put my house in a trust. My attorney said, wait a little bit, but I tried to get my parents' house in a trust. They wouldn't do it because stupid reasons. But that's not unusual to do. You put your house in a trust.
People with money do that all the time.
Yeah. People with money know the rules and hire lawyers and do smart things. So, yeah, that's not unusual.
This is the $1 million secret.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to elaborate on it in a minute, but this is the $1 million secret.
Now I understand why you listed there's 4 entities that can own a house.
Right.
Because what you're doing is just change from one entity to another.
Right.
Cool. Very cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because it's going into a trust, it looks like you're doing estate planning.
Mm-hmm.
The bank would never, ever question that. Because because if you were really doing that, which we are going to be doing that, but if you're really doing that, it's discrimination. They could have a whole bunch of discrimination lawsuits. Because they can't tell you what entity. They can't tell you not to protect your money.
Yeah. And they can't single out one person putting in a trust compared to another person putting in a trust. Like, we like the way you did it, we don't like the way you did it.
Right.
They can't do that either.
They can't play favorites.
Uh-huh.
So let's talk about this for a quick second, okay? A trust is a very specific entity that has very specific rules. Most trusts are used to have, it's got a management team in it, a trustee and a beneficiary and a few other people if needed.
Mm-hmm.
And those people protect the assets and the dividends and who gets them. So based on how the trust is set up, the assets go into the trust, and then these people, like the trustee and the beneficiary, will make decisions on the distribution of funds.
Yeah.
Or the income of funds, like what they take on for assets, right? That's a normal trust. The reason why you could do that is because you could push out money generations that way. It's much better than it's much better to do a trust than a will. Because a will is very limited It doesn't. What happens is, I'm way off topic right now, but what happens is like you could have a trust own the shares of an entity, right? So I don't own the shares of my entity. So I have, Connecticut Homes or Us LLC. I'm in the process of removing those shares and putting them into a trust. So right now I own them. Right? The reason why I do that is because if something happens to me, my trustee can continue to run that business and not have interruptions. Where with a will, it would be harder to do that. So I have all these loans with private lenders and people I know. If something happens to me, I don't want to have an interruption of all of that. So I put it into a trust. So the trust has specific rules and regulations on how to do things. Very, very cool.
Well, you see stories of like somebody dies like John Lennon, but there's a trust, and then contests go on, and benefits to society go on, and people can enter, put songs in, get selected, books get written on trusts, and it goes on and on.
It keeps the business so they can keep running the business. Okay? Now, all that said, blah, 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 doesn't matter. Because what we're doing is not that at all. We're actually forming a property trust that is only specific to that piece of real estate. So you could have $10 million and I'll buy a house from you worth $150,000. It doesn't matter about your $10 million. The trust is specifically written just for that piece of property. Those are the boundaries. It doesn't creep into the rest of your life. So the trust is very specific to this type of transaction.
That's true. It keeps it more simpler just to deal with.
Now, here's the thing that you need to do is, first of all, you need to, once you put it in a trust, if you continue to make the payments, the bank will never question it. Okay? Because all they want is they want their interest, which is their profit. They don't want to recast the loan because it costs them money to do that. So once you put it into a trust, and you communicate to the bank you've put it in a trust, and you communicate to the bank with the proper form signed from the seller, saying that you had the release, you can release some information, you have limited power of attorney, all that kind of stuff. If you do the right documents, you send them to the bank, and the bank says, oh, okay, so you've changed entity. You changed it from John Smith into the 123 Main Street Trust. No alarms.
No, I call the bank for you when I do these things, and they don't ask me, where do I send the paperwork? Here you send the paperwork. Did you get it? Yep, thanks, goodbye. It's the guy sitting at a desk. He's not like the owner of the bank going, is this suspicious? It's a guy at the desk. He goes, thank you, and he goes on to the next phone call. And thank you very much. The checks come in. They go, thank you, and they just go on.
Once you get the name changed, like what you just spouted off, you then call them back and say, okay, the trustee is going to be the person in charge of this account. You need to send all the mail to him or her. So you divert the mail so it's not going to your seller anymore. So now all the invoices, all the statements come to you, you pay the bills, and you own the house. Okay? Now, here we go. You think the podcast has been good so far? Because I'm just getting started. Is all that clear?
Yep.
Okay, good. Here's a vital fact that no one knows. In fact, I didn't know it for 15 years.
You called me a few months ago and said, beep. You couldn't believe it, like, oh my God.
And I stumbled upon this because I read a lot. And I go through this fetish of buying old books off of eBay. Like old books, books written 20, 30, 40 years ago. And this was one of those books I bought. It was about real estate, like written in the 70s or 80s, I think. Maybe, I don't know when it was. Right? And he said something in the book that triggered something in my mind, and I'm like, oh my God, he didn't say this, what I'm going to teach you, he didn't say this in the book. He just said something that triggered something else in my mind, and I went online and I did some homework, and I talked to my attorney, and he was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
what'd you find, Bill?
every closing has something called a settlement statement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is a 2-page summary, usually 2-page, sometimes it's 3, but 2-page summary that explains where all the money's coming in and where it's going out. Right? So it's like a balance sheet of the money for the closing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what money came in from who and what money is getting distributed and when.
Right.
You know, it's got all the attorney fees on there, the taxes. The water bill, the liens, it's got everything.
Realtor commissions.
Everything's on there.
Yep.
So it has to balance.
Yeah, where'd the money go?
Where'd it come from?
Yeah.
Then where did it go?
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to have money from the bank. You're going to have deposit money from the buyer.
Down payment.
All kinds of stuff because there might be multiple deposits. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the realtor gets the deposit. Sometimes the attorney has the deposit. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the seller brings the deposit. The buyer brings the deposit to the table. So
sometimes they forget to bring it.
Yeah, or they bring the wrong amount. So all this is summarized on this thing called a settlement statement.
Yep.
Now, I told you earlier that FHA mortgages is a lion's share of the mortgages in the country, so it would make sense that the government makes their own documents.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So the government calls this document not a settlement statement, but they call it a HUD-1.
Mm-hmm.
And HUD is
Housing and Urban Development.
Right.
Department of.
Yeah. So a HUD-1 is the slang. Most people don't know the word settlement statement. They hear HUD-1. HUD-1 is the settlement statement. They're the same thing. It's just the government's version of the settlement statement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And nowadays, as of this recording, all closings in the United States,
VA, USDA, whatever,
have to use the government's forms, because there were some laws passed, I think, in 2018. I forgot what it's called, something act, where you have the person buying the house has 3 days to review the documents and refuse the deal.
Yeah.
I forgot what it's called, but it's not important. So all documents and every closing is handled through the government. So every closing goes through the government. Okay, so we use their forms. Now, in my closings, I'm kind of a shithead, and I make my attorney actually draft up the old settlement statement because I have trouble reading the new settlement statement because of the way they've printed it. And he says the same thing. And very often when I print up the old settlement statements, I find mistakes on the new settlement statements because they don't match. Because the settlement statements are harder to read. Okay, the way the government made them more complex. Imagine that.
No.
Right? So, here's my point.
But they're both still legally usable?
Yeah, the settlement statement we have to submit to the government. Or we have to use in the closing because of the law of a 3-day refusal process.
Right.
So, you can't, because what happens in a closing is you get into a closing, and most closing agents don't pay attention to the file till a few days out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll open up the file and they'll go, oops, the water bill wasn't ordered, or oops, this wasn't happening, or oops, that didn't happen. Because most closing agents make between $500 and $1,000 to do a closing, which is not a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a lot of them.
So you're not going to have somebody sitting at a table reading this file every 5 minutes hoping it's going to close.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The person selling it is, because they get the lion's share of the money, right? So they're the ones that are running the transaction, and they're usually the least experienced one in the transaction.
Right. And the lawyers are busy too. But they're responsible, but they're
right. The paralegals prepare the deals and then hand them to lawyers for approval or the closing.
Mm-hmm.
There's been many closing agents that are paralegals that will close, and the lawyer just signs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is in Connecticut. In other states, you have escrow companies, and they do it differently. The point is those people make minimum wage or $10, $15 an hour, even $20 an hour. It's not what a lawyer makes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they just kind of do a rat-a-tat-tat one to another, and that's how they do it, right?
Yep.
So here's the point that I'm trying to make here, and a long way around. So I invite every person listening to me right now so that you know that I am very, very serious about what I'm talking about right now. And I don't mean like solid serious. I mean, I'm like, this is huge. This is freaking huge. Okay? Go online and type in to Mr. Google, HUD-1.
HUD-1 or just one?
It doesn't matter. And then settlement statement.
Mm-hmm.
HUD-1 settlement statement. Mm-hmm. And I would like for you to look at a settlement statement. I printed one.
Mm-hmm.
For you, because I know that you're going to want to look and see it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look here, I'm going to show it on the
I have some at home. I haven't checked since you told me this to see how, the ones I have from our closings.
So if you're watching it on...
It's a weird color.
Yeah, that's because my printer's
okay.
out of color.
Okay.
So if you're watching us on Facebook right now, you can see I'm actually holding it up.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're listening to the podcast, just go to your computer and type in settlement statement HUD-1 or HUD-1 settlement statement.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Peter, I want you to take a look at line 203. What does it say?
Existing loan or loans taken subject to.
Read it again. So line 203,
right,
it's on all of them. 203.
Existing loan, parentheses, S if in case there's two. Existing loan taken subject to.
So how is this illegal if it's on a government form? And FHA mortgages say that you can take a loan subject to.
Mm.
Okay? Now let's put the pieces of the puzzle together. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I posed a question to those gurus that spout subject to deals are illegal. How come our government allows us to do it?
Mm.
Again, I think they don't know this.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, all it takes is one bank to say, you can't do them anymore.
Right.
Well, that means you can't do something anymore, but these old ones you could just take over, new ones you could do. But, it's like a general statement they throw out.
I'm going to explain it to you right now.
Go for it.
I will tell you that the answer is no, it's not illegal. It's what they don't understand. Mm. So anybody that doesn't understand something, what do they say?
Can't do it.
Right.
Yeah, anytime, I'm an educator. Anytime, you can't, because they don't know. And if you're in doubt, it's still no.
That's right. So if you're selling somebody something and they don't understand it, are they going to buy it?
No.
Okay, good.
No.
Right. So anything that people don't understand, they stop it.
It's just no.
It's no. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, stay with me here. This is important. What if we had our attorney or closing agent do the legal documents from our seller's name to the trust?
Mm.
Using the HUD-1 and using line 203 with the mortgage amount.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's the magic. You become, all right, before I do this, let me just make sure I say what I say it so you get it.
Mm.
So what I'm saying is Pete Coca-Cola owns the house. I'm going to buy it subject to.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to me doing that, I'm going to arrange a closing for Pete Coca-Cola. Pete the Rookie, I'm using your last name. I never do that. Pete Coca-Cola.
Now they know who I am.
I'm going to arrange with my attorney or closing agent to have Pete Coca-Cola have a closing and put the house into a trust. So the closing is taking it from Pete Coca-Cola's name to a trust. There is going to be a settlement statement and a closing as if it was any other deal, except the closing agent or attorney is going to put the amount of money on line 203 where it says taken subject to. So if your balance amount is $151,823, that number goes on there, and there you go. Now, I am probably going to have to put some money into the deal to pay the attorney.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a transfer tax because if you do the deed correctly, you don't pay transfer tax.
Yeah.
Okay? And you do a closing. So you actually have a legitimate, finalized, pass the deed from Pensacola to 123 Main Street trust. I always name them after the street names.
Yeah.
Is anybody going to stop you from doing that?
Not if the attorney says it's okay. Not if you have it written down.
So
not if it's on the
you have an
form.
attorney closing for you. So what's the bank going to say? It's legal.
Does the bank get the settlement statement?
No.
They don't even need to.
No.
They don't even have to see that.
No.
No.
So if the bank comes along later and says, "Oh, you triggered the due on sale clause," you're like, "How?" I had a closing with a closing agent or an attorney, and I put it in a trust.
But they don't see this statement.
No.
It's
Even if they did, who cares? It's going into a trust.
Yeah.
Here's the amazing thing about a trust. A property trust. When you file the deed, the only disclosure that you put in public record is who the trustee is.
at the town hall, town clerk, in the
where
file.
You file the deed. On the deed it says, Bill Hawthorne, trustee of 123 Main Street Trust.
Right.
So when you put the house into a trust, it doesn't know who the beneficiary is. Right? Mm-hmm. So if I was buying the property from you, I could say, okay, I make Emma the trustee.
Yep.
I'm the beneficiary.
Yep.
Nobody knows I'm the beneficiary. Mm-hmm. That's how we've done it for 15 years. Mm-hmm. But I'm making a change to that today. Because this is genius. But I want to make sure we understand first. Mm-hmm. So what happens is you have a standard closing with a closing agent or an attorney. Mm-hmm. You're taking the entity from Pensacola and putting it into 123 Main Street Trust and naming a trustee. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
It's all legal. You have the sellers come to an attorney so they can't come back later and say, I didn't know what I was doing. There's no problem at all.
Mm-hmm. And the seller doesn't need their own attorney necessarily.
They don't need anybody. Because they're just putting it into a trust.
Okay.
Okay? Are we good so far? Mm-hmm. All right. So, it's pretty clever, right?
Oh, yeah.
So your attorney does the standard closing from the seller's name into a trust formed at the closing. It's just a property trust that's formed at the closing. And you have all the legal beagles in the deal. Perfect. Now comes the best part. You have the seller. Actually, before I tell you that, I want to back up. So, if I was buying a house from you, I could do it this way. I don't do it this way because I like to protect myself. I like to have layers of asset protection. Mm-hmm. But if I was buying a house from you, and you were the seller and I was the buyer, I could simply, if it was one of my first deals, I could be the trustee.
Right.
So you, the seller, are selling the property into, or not selling, you're putting the house into a trust. And this is the best part. Mm-hmm. This is the best part. You are the beneficiary as the seller. Oh. And I'm the trustee.
Well, that would be more normal, wouldn't it? If it's my house,
exactly.
I'm the beneficiary.
So it used to be what we did is when I bought the house from you, I would pick a trustee that I would trust.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you only file the deed. There's a declaration of trust which explains how the trust is going to run that you form at the same time. And that does not have to be filed. So the beneficiary stays anonymous, which is why trusts are so amazing.
Yeah.
Which is why politicians use them, which is why they have the laws they have, because the beneficiary can stay anonymous because you don't have to file that. All you have to do is file the deed with the trustee name on it. So an attorney, they would want to sue that entity, or a bank, they would want to look at, they don't know, they just see the trustee, oh, it's in a trust, okay. They assume the owner of the house is the beneficiary. But you don't know because the paper's not filed.
But a person could make someone else the beneficiary.
Right.
In case they croak, and then the kid gets it, or the cousin gets it, or somebody gets it.
Exactly. So here's what
You
happens.
can make anybody beneficial, like insurance policy. Who do you want to get the money? That guy.
Right.
And they make movies about who the hell gets it sometimes, because it can be whatever.
Right.
Okay.
So let's say you own the house and I'm buying from you. We do subject to, we have a closing with an attorney or closing agent. We use a settlement statement. We do everything 100% legal. You put the house into a trust, make me the trustee.
Right.
Now,
So you, the buyer, is the trustee.
Is the trustee. Now, the way trusts are written is the trustee is the only one that can make decisions and sign documents. The beneficiary can't.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why is because the way a trust is set up is they don't want you to hide money and protect money and all that kind of stuff. So it has to be another person that does it, not you. They're trying to keep you from manipulating the money. Mm-hmm. So the trustee is the one that's in charge of all the loans. So if you wanted to get a loan on that property, once you put it in a trust, the trustee would, the trustee would have to sign all the documents.
Right.
Now, the trustee is completely transparent, which means nothing sticks to him. So if he signs the loan documents and the loan goes sour, he doesn't get attacked.
Yeah, it's like he's the overseer, like somebody like you hire a manager.
He's like a secretary, or a manager.
He's managing it. It's not his liability. He's just trying to run
it's
it.
Assumed
it's his
that
job.
he was instructed from the beneficiary to do it, so he had to do it.
Right.
So here's the next amazing thing, because I'm way off script right now. The next amazing thing is that the declaration of trust says that the beneficiary with one form that doesn't need the trustee's approval, you can fire and hire another trustee. Yeah. So all you have to do is make the form and sign it as the beneficiary, and you're done. So you can move trustees whenever you want.
Yep.
You can appoint new ones and get rid of old ones. Okay? So all that's like the down and dirty with the trust.
Okay.
But pay attention to this. You're the owner of the house.
Me.
Yeah. And I'm buying it from you subject to. We had this closing. We moved the title from your name into the trust. You're the beneficiary.
Which would be logical.
Which would be
my
normal
house,
things, right?
My mortgage. Yep.
Which simply means that the seller is the owner at the closing.
Yep.
What we have happen at the closing is we also had the owner sign an assignment of beneficial interest. Get what I just did?
Yeah. He assigned the beneficial interest, meaning he can change the beneficiary.
Right.
So if you're in a will and somebody says, we're going to give you all this money, you say, okay, I want to give it to him instead. Right? You could change that.
This means that the seller could assign his beneficial interest into another entity that you could be partners with.
Partners.
So, first of all, let's just take the simplest transaction. You sell the house to the trust. I'm the trustee who signs all the documents, the buyer.
Yeah.
And then eventually we could put that your beneficial interest into a entity or an LLC or a corporation, which I also own. And then remove the trustee and put another trustee in there.
Interesting game.
Right? Now, it seems a little complicated, but it's not the way. An attorney will do all this in a closing or a closing agent once they understand it.
And does it surprise or impress them, or both?
They read the law and they're impressed because they're like, oh my God, how did you figure it out? That's what my attorney says.
Yeah. And it's completely legal.
And it sounds more, it takes me more to explain it than actually do it.
Yeah.
Because if you have the 6 documents that we use, which by the way, I'll tell you in a few minutes where you can go get the documents, right? So, but I can't settle at that because I'm Bill the deal maker. So we understand all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to wind down the podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
According to the clock, we've only been doing it for 42 minutes. But it's actually...
it says plus 30.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than that. Okay, so... I ask you this question. Actually, even better than this, is it or is it not true that if you do this strategy, that you could actually wholesale this deal to someone else for a fee?
I suppose.
All you have to do is assign the beneficial interest to your wholesaler, and he pays you 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Who else is talking about that? Wholesaling subject to deals legally.
How do you sleep at night?
Let's reel it back in for a minute, because we're definitely on Bill's planet right now.
Mm-hmm.
What if you and your money guy decided to become partners?
No, who's the money guy?
Yeah, let's talk about that. In other words, the house needs $20,000 worth of repairs. Now, the only reason why you would take a property subject to as opposed to doing a lease option or a slot deal is because you need to put money in.
Yeah.
So anytime you put any, and when I mean money in, the guru like Ron LeGrand and all those guys talk about anything less than $5,000 is not money in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in that. If you put more than $100 in, you're putting money in. Okay.
You have to do, sometimes you have to do a little bit of cleanup, spruce up, $1,000, the lawn, the inside paint, just to make the house livable. We're not renovating it.
Right. So if you put any amount of money, and I say over $1,000,
yeah,
right? If you put any amount of money into a property, you want the deed to be in your name to protect your money.
Yeah. You put your money in something you own. You wouldn't renovate your neighbor's house. It's
Exactly
something that you own.
Or you wouldn't renovate your landlord's house. If you were renting from the landlord,
it's a lease,
you would rent.
You don't own it.
Right.
Things turn one way, you wind up going away from the property, then your money's gone.
So let's say the house needs $20,000 worth of repairs. Okay. If the money guy was the beneficiary, would he be giving you a loan?
No. He'd be investing in his own property.
He'd be part owner, right?
Part owner.
So if you're the owner and you sell me the house as trustee, and then right at the same time at the closing, he signs a beneficial assignment to my money guy, the money guy is now the beneficiary, right? And I'm the trustee. So the money guy just got... Let's do this mathematically. So now you make him the partnership in the deal based on the percentage of the money.
So would it be him and you as beneficiaries?
Right. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a house where $200,000 fixed up. We call that after renovated value.
Right.
Right. The seller lets you assume what's owed. Say $120,000.
Right.
Then your money guy puts up $20,000 for repairs. So now you own it for $140,000. This is a common deal. I do these like all the time.
Yep.
Okay. So here's how your partnership would work between you and the money guy. Your partnership would look like this. His $20,000 is 10% of the $200,000 that he gave you, right? So he's 10% partner.
Right.
So he gets 10% of the profit now, profit monthly, profit later, right? So he gets the money for being all the way in,
right? Based on the final after renovated value,
right? Because the assets worth $200,000,
and it will be as soon as you do that repair.
So technically, you put up 120.
You're covering
he
that.
put up 20. Technically,
right.
Right? Now you didn't have to go get the 120. You got a seller to give it to you.
Yeah, well, you did your homework and worked hard to get that part. So
you're here listening right now, trying to figure out how to do it, right? So there you go. Okay. So we get all that?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Let's do some math.
Mm.
Now stick with me here. You might have to rewind this and do it a couple times.
Get your pencil and paper.
So based on the numbers I just gave you, right? If you sold the house for $200,000 to your buyer,
Mm-hmm.
they would give you, say, 10 grand down, which is common.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say your monthly payments gives you $400 a month positive cash flow.
Yep.
And let's say the money later is 50 grand.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because you sold for 200,000.
Yeah. You're in for 140. There's a $60,000 gap, but call it 50. Some expenses here and there, some closing costs, whatever, right?
Right. Or you say you sell it for 190 or whatever. But yeah, that's exactly right. So 50,000 is a safe number.
Okay.
Right. All right. So the money guy would get 10% of the 10 grand down.
So he gets $1,000.
Right. And then if you were to rent this for 2 years, okay, $400 times 24 is $9,600.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So 400 times 24, which is 2 years, not the 5 years, just 2 years.
Right.
And your rent-to-own person would cash you out. Okay? He would get $960.
10% of the 960 of the 9,600. Yep.
Right. If you rent for 2 years.
Yep.
Plus, you would get 50 grand when you sold.
And 10% of that
is 5 grand.
He gets 5.
Okay.
That's a pretty good day. Add that up. Go ahead.
Okay. So
wow.
In 2 years, he gets $6,960
off of 20 grand.
Yeah. Which it's $3,480 a year. But over 2 years, it would be 34.8%.
That's a good one. It's a damn good one.
So who else is offering your money guy 35%?
Yeah, even half of that per year is still 17 something. Go get that somewhere. Passive income for not doing anything.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm just like touching upon these things so people can get that this is real. The magic is the trust. It's a property trust, not a retirement trust. And they have a bunch of different names for it. The way it works is the deed that we use when the person signs it, when the seller signs a deed, it not only gives us a warranty deed, but it also is a warranty deed of trust. So the trust is formed in the 2-page deed. The declaration is notarized. There's about 5 blank spaces on the declaration that you have to fill out. Maybe a little bit more with the name and stuff. There's about 5 blank spaces you fill out on the declaration. Trust done. It's not some complicated, convoluted thing to do.
Well, how many documents are there in a regular closing?
Yeah. The trust is probably 5 or 7 legal pages.
Yeah.
And very plain English. Okay. You do a limited power of attorney. You do a escrow letter. You do a authorization to release.
Release information to the trust so trust knows what's happening.
So this closing has like probably 6 documents in it. So it's not as complicated as we make it sound when I explain it. I have to explain it to you all because
first you have to unexplain it.
Yeah, you have to. You think that it can't be done.
First you have to undo it to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really simple.
Yeah.
But because of what you've been taught and all the myths and the theories, and it takes me longer to, like you said, that's a good point, undo it so that I can teach it to you.
Educationally, that's what you have to do. It's false data or incomplete data. And so, I mean, I don't know how long the closing is, but when I called the bank to tell them that, the house is being put in a trust, they go, okay, where do I send the documents? Send it to here. Okay. It's 5 minutes.
Right.
And I attach it to an email and I send it off.
Right.
It's
Usually
5
it
minutes.
takes 3 times to do that too. Some banks it takes 3 times.
Yeah, because they go, where'd it go? And sometimes you might have to have the original seller call and say
That's
it's okay
right.
to mail it to this address.
The only time I've ever
fine.
had that happen is when the seller's in bankruptcy.
Oh.
Because that deal you're talking about, it was because he was in bankruptcy that he had to call and do it. They wouldn't release the documents until he called. Mm-hmm. And he had to sign documents.
Yeah.
But that's the only time that's ever
happened. It could vary with the bank, but if they do, the seller will do it because you already told him you're doing it. He just make the phone call because he doesn't want the bills. Hey, you want the bills? You want me to pay the bills? Right. He wants you to pay the bills.
Yeah, if you want me to write the checks, you'll need to do this.
Yeah, just call the bank, tell them to send them there.
And you sit down with them on speakerphone and you coach them and do it.
Yeah.
And you never have a problem.
No. It's really, really simple. They go, thank you, and they hang up, they go away. It's done. 5 minutes.
Right.
I did it 2 days ago.
No credit checks. No problems. No loans. Nothing.
Well, the big difference, if you haven't figured it out yet, folks, is how many houses could you buy if you have your own credit allow you to qualify for one mortgage after the other.
That's right.
But this way, it's unlimited how many you could buy. That's the point.
So I pose a closing question.
That's funny, Bill.
What's funny?
Closing.
Yeah. I pose a closing question. Here's my posing question. How much money could an individual make if they understood a slot deal, understood a lease option deal, and understood subject to?
Because they require very, very little money to get into?
They're the easiest. Yeah, they had the least amount of risk. Well, subject to, you have a lot of risk because you put the deed in your name.
Yeah.
But the slot deal and lease option deal, and I'm going to tell you from the bottom of my heart, if you, like right now I'm doing my second internship where I'm actually training people how to find these deals. Mm-hmm. And if you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/internship, you can't get into this one, but maybe the next one you can get into. You can get on a waiting list. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or just send me a support ticket and I'll help you get in. Okay. Because I just started it. My point is, if you had a deal hunting system where you found off of Zillow and Craigslist and those common places for sale by owners or people that are renting property, and you texted them 3 texts, if they say yes to all 3 of your questions, you get on the phone with them and ask them 8 or 10 questions that lead you into sending them an offer. I have an Excel spreadsheet that actually devises the offer, so all you do is you put 5 comps in there, which I tell you which sites to go get those numbers. Mm-hmm. It automatically devises those offers, and then I give you a 8 or 10 page offer pack that has a cover letter, has a letter of intent with 3 offers on it, and then all the frequently asked questions about how to lease a house. Mm. You email it to that person. You also mail it to them, and then 4 or 5 days later you call them and say, what'd you think of my 3 offers? You've never looked at the house. Mm. How many of those could someone do from their desk in a week making offers before they end up going out to a house and qualifying the house? Because it used to be we qualified, then we made the offer, and then we made a deal. And this strategy that I'm talking about, where we're just doing slot deals, lease option deals, and getting the deed or subject to deals. Mm-hmm. We used to qualify the owner, make the offer, make a deal. Now what we do is we make the offer, we qualify the owner and the house, and then go make the deal.
Yeah.
And the way we do that is because if we make the offer and then I talk to them on the phone and we strike up some sort of a deal, I send them a 1-page document that is the lease and the option with all the numbers in it, and I send it to them via DocuSign or something like that, which is an electronic signing software. Mm-hmm. They sign that document. Now I go out and look at the house. I'm not going out to the house to sell the house or sell the seller. I'm not going out there to do anything except just look at the house. Mm-hmm. In fact, in my office, what we do is we actually have a service that goes out and takes pictures of the house and sends us the house. And then I get either a realtor or one of my coaching clients as a partner to actually go sell the house with me. And I do them all over the country.
Yeah.
Or am starting to do them all over the country. And we'll be looking for partners to be doing that. If they go through my internship and my other training and they're qualified and they're a coaching client and they're qualified, they'll become a partner.
Yeah.
So I start splitting deals with them that I'm finding for them, that I'm negotiating for them.
But you just need somebody boots on the ground at some point.
Right.
And that's a great way to learn the business and get into it so you can.
That's today's technology. The reason why I go through that at the end of this podcast is not to do anything other than tell you from the bottom of my heart, if you are using this system and using the texting script and the phone script, you are going to find other deals, including subject to. There are going to be people, when you say to them, would you be willing to sell the house for what you owe on it? And they say yes, that is a subject to deal.
Right.
You ask that one question, would you be willing to sell the house for what you owe on it? No. Okay, well, you owe 120. How much did you want? Well, I wanted 10 grand to walk away. That's a subject to deal because 80% of $200,000 is 160. So you could pay up to 160 with all the repairs, maintenance, and everything, right? He's asking for 130. That is a subject to deal. That's the deal we just talked about where you can actually pull in a money guy and he puts up to 10 grand and becomes part of the trust with you.
Yep.
Peter, I think you know this. I've spent probably well over 100 grand on my education in real estate. I've never read this anywhere. I've never heard anybody talk about this anywhere. I've never seen anybody close this way, but we do.
Yeah.
And this podcast is a little longer than normal. But I promised I would talk about my 7 strategies without any disclosure or any barriers, and I've done that. We got a couple more to do. The next ones are not fun for me. They're rehab, wholesale, blah.
But they're so pretty, Bill.
Yeah.
Look how pretty my kitchen is.
Whatever, you know.
Been there, done
A&E,
that.
you know, all that stuff.
HGTV,
Yeah,
DIY.
whatever. We're not even supposed to be using those names, but.
All
right.
Thanks for advertising.
So, yeah. So we need to get out of here because we're out of time. 2 things I'd like to say before we finish. Number 1, I would like reviews. I mean, I feel like I'm pouring my guts out here. I could turn this into a 2-day seminar and charge $1,000 for what I just did.
Easily.
Especially if I give the documents. Okay? If I give the documents, I can get $3,000. Okay? Here's my point. I would like reviews. That's what keeps me going. So go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, top of the page, click on podcast, or just go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/podcast. And on the right side, it says, give us a review. Please go do that. This is so important to me. I fund this thing myself. I pay for everything. I have no guest speakers. I continually talk about the same topic over and over again so that you make sure that you understand it. Please give me a review. That's the least you can do is spend 2 minutes out of your day and go give me a review, or a review. Please do that. I beg of you. Okay? Because that's what keeps us going. That's what keeps our ratings. You know, you go into iTunes and type in real estate investing. We're number 3. It's because of you guys giving me reviews. I want to continue that. If I'm gonna do this and keep working, I want some exchange from my listeners. And if you're not giving me exchange, it's going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt me.
You know, I was thinking that seriously because I know how I call it life flows. It just flows, right? You want to get something in real estate, well, you have to give something. Somebody helps you, help them. You help somebody. That's how I got here, folks. I called Bill one day, say, hey, can blah, blah, blah. Say, okay, we'll do that. And then we've been together for like over 4 years now because I help him any way I can. And he helps me
tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. But you don't get that by just sucking things up in the air. So when you can, be philanthropic or altruistic, or whatever you want to call it, and just say thank you. It's not that hard.
Right. I've had people send me support tickets and tell me they'll come to work for me for a year for nothing.
Well, that's kind of
just to learn.
Well, remember I said, Bill, if you show me how to do this, I'll work with you. I don't care. Take all the money, give me a half. Just give me $1. I don't care. I just want to learn how to do this.
Right.
And it's worked out well for me, and I've tried to help build back as much as I can.
And you've done that. So the second thing I'd like to say is, because I'm going to get support tickets on where to get the documents. Mm-hmm. So if you go to Flipping Houses for Rookies, and on the top links, there's only a few of them. The top right-hand side, there's a link that says courses. There's one in there that says every document for creative real estate investing. So go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. Top right-hand side, it says courses. And when you open it up, it's a gold header, and it says every document for creative real estate. I'm going to tell you that those documents, those trust documents, and they've cost me thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, you got to go to a lawyer with whatever you have, whatever they have, and pour through them and change things and tweak, right?
Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
Yeah. And there's just no way that you'll get them as exclusive as what I've got them. Because I do this. This is like my, you know me. Mm-hmm. If I could buy a house subject to, or any property subject to, it's my first foot forward every time.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us. Next week, we're going to continue on the 7 strategies. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I did.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.